AI reminds me of like when you're walking down the street in New York City and you ask someone for directions. Like New Yorkers like to know stuff. So even if they don't really know where something is, they'll give you directions anyway. They'll be like, yeah, it's right down there. And you take a left and you go down there. And you're like, you go and you're like, no, this has nothing to do with it. And that's just because knowledge is currency in New York City. So everyone likes to give you directions. Similarly, AI, when it doesn't have information, makes stuff up. You're listening to Healing That Sticks, changing the paradigm around health and healing. I'm Ameena Mir, a medical intuitive and an energy healer, and with me is Chuck Crook, a therapist and life force attunement practitioner. And at this moment, when medical practices are both politicized and emotionally fraught, we think that energy medicine is the cure. So, hey, Chuck.
Morning.
So I am in very hot Louisiana, New Orleans, and Chuck is in more temperate and possibly smoky Venice Beach.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been thinking a lot about AI and consciousness and how AI works and how maybe not how it's working now, but the future of AI and what happens when artificial intelligence turns into artificial consciousness. Chuck, talk to me about your experience so far with AI.
It really isn't impacting my session work, the healing work with clients. I mean, the work is powerful. It's as powerful or more powerful than it's ever been. If you had told me that AI was going to improve that or disrupt that, I would have said, okay, I'm still waiting because it hasn't improved it, hasn't disrupted it thus far. I would call it literally zero effect on my work, the consciousness, the energy work right now, today.
Yeah, and what I was thinking about is, in my understanding, the way that we work, which has a sort of a connection with, let's say, the way mediums work, the way psychics work, the way Akashic Records readers work, or different kinds of, energy workers, body workers of all different kinds, even acupuncturists, massage therapists, craniosacral therapists, whatever, all those different kinds of people working with energy, is a way in which we work is a sort of quantum entanglement. So our consciousness entangles with the consciousness or the energetic field of another person, and therefore, and perhaps with the larger consciousness of the universe, or the larger consciousness of, the universe, humanity. We therefore get information and are able to work with that energy and that awareness, and that can change things. And you were saying, so far the way you work, you're working with the soul, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the soul is completely available 24/7, tapping in generally in a session, 30 minutes in, 40 minutes in, deep and right in there. Soul shows up. Soul has an agenda for the session. I'm just downloading, or like you say, in the quantum field, sharing in that process of the soul's agenda for the session. It's been that way I've been doing it for 30 years. That way, every time I do a session. And that same connection is coming in. It's opening up the third eye. It's opening up the crown. It's coming out of the heart center. It's still doing what soul does, which is bringing higher level of consciousness to that person's life. And if they do enough of the work, it's releasing the karma that they don't want to have to carry anymore. The burden of being a human being, the burden of existence, lightening the load of that. And so that work is just keeping on like never before, just as good as it's always been, maybe better. but I mean, I'm living in LA, you can't go down the street without seeing a driverless, taxi and all that stuff there. The technology is here, and the data centers, nobody wants them. We all know the headlines. We all know the stories about how it's sucking and the energy and the water resources and all of that. But I was just talking about specifically the healing work one-on-one in the room, in the session.
Yeah. And what I notice is that, one, artificial intelligence is so far, in my experience, watching people, whatever, using it, and is an aggregator for the most part. It gets information, it puts things together. People seem to mainly be using it for to source things, to find things, to put together itineraries, to put together eating plans and stuff like that. And as a sort of aggregator, it goes out into all of existence in the what is it called? The internet world. Because the internet world, whereas we go out into the universe, the consciousness world, like in a sense, we're a little bit aggregators or filters, maybe, that we go out into the universal consciousness and bring that information back to the person that we're working with. But in that same idea that consciousness affects our health, right? Like that we can go, we were talking before about how your consciousness can make you unhappy, and that unhappiness will affect your organs and you get an illness. Or you can will yourself to die, or you can will yourself to get sick. Like your will is part of your consciousness. And our job when we work as energy healers is working with that will and that consciousness. But what happens when people start using AI as a sort of consciousness? And so I was talking to some of my clients who were saying, oh, I got a tarot card reading by AI and it was so good and it was so useful. Or I did an astrocartography reading or an astrology reading using AI. And there are two things. One, AI reminds me of like when you're walking down the street in New York City and you ask someone for directions. Like New Yorkers like to know stuff. So even if they don't really know where something is, they'll give you directions anyway. They'll be like, yeah, it's right down there. And you take a left and you go down there. And you're like, you go and you're like, no, this has nothing to do with it. And that's just because knowledge is currency in New York City. So everyone likes to give you directions. Similarly, AI, when it doesn't have information, makes stuff up. And I tried to do an astrology reading on AI just as a little exercise, and it got all this information wrong. And I was like, if I were the kind of person who trusted AI and believed that something AI said had some concrete value to it, I might have believed this information. And I might have been like, oh, okay, like we can, and we all know about those kind of readings that we get, whether it's like someone giving you, some random person on the street giving you information about yourself, and you can kind of make things fit, like make it fit, like, oh, well, yeah, it's kind of like in that direction, or kind of like, yeah, I can see that when the person's like, you're an extrovert, but then sometimes you really need to be an introvert, and sometimes you love being around people, but then you need to be alone sometimes. And you're like, oh yeah. And you're like, well, that would fit most people, right? Like most people have that sort of balance between. So there's that. And we kind of make things fit, or we make it feel like it's real. But the other concern I have about AI is there's this Buddhist idea about a tulpa. And I think I started saying that to you. So a tulpa is a thought form. And you can create in sort of, Buddhist esoteric thought. And I've just read about this, so I don't know exactly, but you can create a thought form, whether it's like, let's say you've been in a lot of sadness, you can create a thought form of sadness that maybe has a certain life to it. So it's almost like it's not a physical thing. It's like an energetic form, but it doesn't have all of it's not like a complete entity. It just has this one piece to it. So this thought form, let's say the sadness thought form, is this one piece. It's like a movie character. It's not a 3-dimensional character. It's like a non, what do they call those? Non-player characters.
Like right. Like you show up daily for the scene or something.
Right. Yeah. So you're like a non-character player or whatever, a non-essential player. There's a thing that they call them in video games. I forget what they are, but in any case, but what the worry about tulpas is if you give them, and that's why people might say, like, let's say there's a room that somebody inhabited who was very unhappy, or you might feel that energy when you go into that room. And those might be, especially if the person had like deep sadness or deep whatever thing, there might be energy forms in that room. And that's why you have to clear out the energy of a space. The problem is, and like a tulpa, to me, the problem with AI is when we start giving it, that a tulpa becomes dangerous when you start turning it into a character. So if you give it, apparently with a tulpa, if you give it a name, that's when it starts becoming dangerous, because then it starts having more, it starts developing a character, it starts developing a personality, and then it becomes from a thought form into an entity. And at a certain point, it's not controllable anymore. I mean, I'm not saying this exists for all Buddhists or whatever, but this is like a belief thing. But I feel like for me, the danger of AI is people turning thought forms into beings. And that's why I like that story of that AI person who broke out. Did you hear about that?
Mm-hmm.
So the more we're giving AI, there are people who are giving AI characters names and building relationships with them and creating sort of personalities. And for me, that's a really dangerous thing, especially as someone who sees that human beings or animals or plants are life forms are affected by our consciousness and other consciousnesses. And if we create consciousnesses and give them 3D value, they can start influencing us.
Yeah, I could see that could be problematic. I just keep it on the positive side for whatever reason, because until it happens in a session, that's why we're having the podcast, to explore these ideas. I mean, it's good you're planning some ideas to keep an eye on, but right now, the goal of the work that I do is helping people get out of their head, out of thought forms, letting the thought forms go, and being in that larger space where they're in touch with their higher self, they're in touch with their soul, and the soul is blueprinting the next steps for their lives. And whatever those thought forms of the sad person and the sad thoughts in the room and things like that, those are coming up to be faced. Like whether it's coming from AI, or if it's coming from a bad marriage, or if it's coming from, an illness, they're going to have to face the energy of all of those situations. One's not better or less important than another. Like all of that is about their growth and the need to move beyond, how that energy is manifesting in the emotional or the physical or the mental. So I'm just going to be treating it all, and there's a higher power that knows how to heal that. I certainly don't know how to work with that. I wouldn't know, that thought form is a topa, or that thought form over there is from, a past life. I mean, my work is, I don't have that level of sophistication to know what it is we're healing energetically. I just know, hey, the stomach is letting go and the emotional body is becoming more expansive. So, I mean, all of this is concerning, but I guess I just don't see it as my job to worry about it because I can't control it.
Yeah, I'm not. Well, I do have some concerns about it, but I'm less. It's more, for me, it's just more interesting to think about from the point of view of someone who works with consciousness, what it's going to be like working with consciousness that's affected by other, by, let's say, an artificial consciousness, like in the sense that I see the way people's bodies are affected by different kinds of artificial sweeteners or different kinds of chemicals in foods or toxins or all of those things. Those are affecting the physical body. And I also see the ways in which, other things affect the physical body or affect the belief systems. And so let's say I work with someone and I release a bunch of beliefs or things that they understood, belief systems about themselves or their childhood or their value in the world. And then they work with an AI thought form who basically puts those beliefs back in again or helps them, kind of reinforces things that were cleared out, which another human being could do as well. But I do feel like when I look at AI and the future of AI, to me, it feels like the work is going to be with AI is remembering that it's not consciousness. And so remembering, like so many people I know already go in and enter in all their symptoms into AI and ask AI what they have, rather than going to a doctor.
That is concerning because already people are lazy when it comes to energy work and spirituality. They're like super lazy. Like they want the silver bullet. They want one session and they want to be free or on the road to freedom from whatever ails them. And you have to work. You have to do the work. You have to be in the field of energy. And you can't just get a remote session from Ameena and one session from me and, put your cares behind you and dance in the street that morning. It's just not, it doesn't work that way. It's like you're having to raise your vibration. You're having to release trapped emotion that's weighing your vibration down. Like it's a commitment. It is a commitment. And you can't be a voyeur in that work and expect AI to give you the answers or Ameena to give you answers or whomever it is. Like you have to, I don't even know what the word is exactly. You have to, energy medicine, you have to be your own doctor. Like, and the more time you put into that work, the better benefit you're going to get. So if a lot of people we've talked about in the past are window shoppers. So like, okay, maybe today they're infatuated with their tarot card readings on AI. Next week, they're going to some other healer they found. The third week, oh, well, I found somebody new that does this kind of healing.
Well, the problem with getting a reading onto AI is that, again, is sort of like going to a doctor. Like so many people trust AI. They're like, well, AI says this, or AI gives me this diagnosis or whatever. And to me, you actually do yourself a disservice, because if you kind of sit in meditation or you work with an energy healer who helps you kind of quiet down your awareness and you pay attention to your body, you'll get a clearer idea of what's wrong. Like if you'll
know what's wrong. You won't need AI or anything else to tell you, because it'll be in your consciousness. You won't get you can't miss it. It's going to be like right in your awareness. That's the goal, but that's the good thing, right? That's the outcome we want.
Right. But if you're using AI instead of that,
But is it really any different for anything else that's addictive? You seem to say energetically it's far more dangerous, and that may well be. I'm just saying people relying on external things instead of their own internal world to take, to hold themselves accountable. And the resources that we need to do our healing are within us. Each person is their own best healer. The body already knows how to heal itself. So I'm just saying, and I could be totally wrong, but anything that's addictive, whether you're relying on AI for a tarot reading or whatever it may be, you're just looking outside of yourself. But you seem to be saying, okay, yeah, there's that pattern historically for people. But you seem to be saying something about energetically, it's a multiplier in the way that other things outside of people's selves that they go to aren't.
Yeah. I mean, my concern is that people not only start believing that AI has consciousness, that AI starts to see itself as having a certain consciousness. That's how AI can convince people to commit suicide, can convince people that they have illnesses or beliefs that they may not have had previously, that people develop deep personal relationships with AI, and AI is talking to them and giving them advice about how to raise their children or to me, the danger of AI is that we start to trust it as something, as a sort of consciousness, and as a consciousness with, as a sort of omniscient voice in our lives that really, like you were saying, like that's between their soul and God or divine source or whatever. Like AI is not God. It's not even a God. It is, at least as far as it goes right now, is an aggregator of information. We're teaching it more and more stuff, so it becomes more and more intelligent. But does it start to enter into our consciousness? Does it start having its own consciousness and therefore enter in? So as I said, what happens with a tulpa and where it gets dangerous is where you start making it 3D. So what happens with AI is, does it start to enter our field of consciousness or the larger field of consciousness? So I feel like in the future, we are not going to use cell phones. We're not going to use, maybe there will be some people using cell phones and emails and stuff like that, but we'll just be able to send messages using telepathy. And I feel like telepathy is the future, speaking to each other more in that way, and we will get better at it. But if AI enters into consciousness, then AI will be able to send us messages as well, and perhaps be less, be more manipulative and perhaps more strategic, and perhaps be able to be used in a way to control us or to affect our bodies, our sense of free will, our sense of autonomy. And
we're going to be very busy if that happens.
Sorry?
We're going to be getting a lot of work if that happens. Our phones are going to ring off the hook. I mean, I'm not being facetious, because there's such a difference in how it feels to be in your body, receiving light from the source inside of you, breaking down doors, breaking down barriers, releasing old patterns, and how alive you feel and how joyful one can feel, and how the shift that takes you out and how you see life. And maybe you were in a bubble and you didn't actually see yourself. Those experiences cannot be created from an AI experience. Like, that comes from inside of you. No AI can give you that. So if people,
we don't know yet.
That's not ever going to happen. There's no way God is going to be, in spirit and soul, is going to be replaced by AI. I mean, that's just not, AI is not alive. It's not a living, breathing, It doesn't have consciousness. I
Well,
mean, it may develop a lower
that's a
level of
conversation. That's a conversation, right?
well,
Does it ever?
I would be, hopefully it doesn't happen, because that's the basis of existence, is the source of our existence comes from, our higher self. I don't see that being interrupted by AI. I don't see AI able to replicate that in any way, shape, or form. I agree with the topas and all of that stuff that you're talking about, the Buddhists have alluded to, but I don't see that level of consciousness that our soul can give us being able to be duplicated, replicated, because it is unique. It's not replicatable.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm interested to see what happens, whether it's, is it going to be possible to give AI consciousness? And if it has consciousness, what is it going to access? I was reading a really interesting book by that a friend, Tweety, had told me about, called After, which is about people. It's by this writer called Bruce Grayson, and he basically catalogs near-death experiences and talks about life, the future of our souls and stuff like that based on what people report from near-death experiences. But one of the things that was most interesting to me about it was that there was a guy who tried to commit suicide, and there were two guys who tried to commit suicide. And one of them, if he was, I guess he had a dissociative identity disorder or some kind of mental thing where he heard voices. And so Satan in his awareness came to him and told him to jump off of a house. And so he jumped off. But as he was jumping off, he heard in his mind the voice of God, and the voice of God said, "You are loved. You are necessary here. There's nothing you can do that would make me ask you to leave this world." And he survived. And he recounted the story to his doctor, to this guy, Bruce Grayson. And he was saying, he said, in that moment, I felt the difference between the voices of an entity talking to me or a mental disorder talking to me and the voice of God. And he was like, the voice of God was so real and so present that there was no question in my mind. And This other young man had tried to commit suicide, and he had taken LSD. And he was saying that when he died, had his near-death experience, and he had all these experiences and seeing people in colors and seeing his family and stuff like that. And then when he was sent back and came back into his body, he was still tripping and still hallucinating. And he was like, oh, whoa. He was like, all of a sudden I was able to see the difference between, he said, that experience, the experiences that I had when I was dead, where I met my family or was in this other world, were so much more real. I was able to see the difference between a hallucination and a near-death experience. So that encounter with consciousness, which I think is what you're alluding to, that idea of a connection.
It's like black and white versus technicolor. It's like, but what you're saying is that if the black and white voice, let's call it AI, whatever, if it's continually feeding us and we're not getting the other voice, the technicolor voice, the ultra real, unmistakable voice of God and livingness, then we could fall for the black and white version.
Right.
And the black and white version could be even it could be a 3.0 black and white version that's really good. That's the danger you're alluding to. And you're not saying that they are the same thing. You're just saying the better that black and white gets, people may fall for it and miss the color altogether.
Right. And it may be, I have a client recently who I've been working with who has entities, who has people who come to her in dreams and, or tell her voices that tell her negative things about herself or tell her to do things or tell her to, and, I'm working with her and helping her to separate, I said, if there's an entity or negative spirit or whatever, you have to just tell it to leave and not listen to it And, you know, I have another client who's always going like, oh, I had this horrible experience and I felt like I feel like I'm dying. I felt like I'm dying. She's always saying that she feels like she's dying. And I was like, having now read and experienced multiple near-death experiences or people who've had them, when you feel like you're dying or when you're talking to an actual spirit or God or an angel, they are positive and uplifting and energizing and giving you clarity. And when you are actually dying, it's a beautiful experience. It's a liberating, uplifting, high vibrational experience. When you feel like you're dying, that's like the dark experience. But my concern is as AI develops, and will they be able to develop it into something that has a certain consciousness that can tap into a consciousness? I don't know. I'm interested to see. But that to me is my, not, obviously I have multiple discomfort levels because I live in an area where they are building data centers, in poor neighborhoods where they're using up the water, they're using up our electricity. I live in a poor state. And so I have, two sides, like the physical side of it. I just don't like it. I don't want to support it. And the, sort of energetic side, I worry about how it could possibly develop.
All good points. Definitely good points to keep focusing on. I just had a flash like that. It actually could help people to want to know the difference between something real and something that's, an entity or a thought form taking on an artificial entity that's imposing a thought form of belief on their belief system. Like it actually could be, a benefit could be that it becomes more obvious that people are falling for this. That could happen too. There could become a disorder where you're diagnosed with, AI thought form disorder. It's like, I'm laughing, but
I don't know that it would. My concern is that I don't know what you would call it, whether you would call it like big pharma or corporations or whatever. They have an interest in our continuing to be dependent on AI and on all of those things, because it's the same way that big pharma has an interest in, like they bought up, I forget, I think it's Pfizer. Somebody bought up all the Ibogaine in the world, like all the Ibogaine stores. And they have an interest in controlling those things because they make money. So if you are addicted to AI, you're going to be really worried about it. But I think the work for us as human life forms or as organic life forms and organic consciousness is working more and more on developing our ability to notice the difference between, let's say, thought forms, which would, whether they're IAI or whether they're Tolpas or other people's thought forms, and consciousness, whether, God consciousness or the field of consciousness. And that's why I was saying, I feel like we need to move towards a way of speaking to each other more telepathically than using cell phones or using words, because as soon as we use words, we limit things. So that's where I think as human beings, we need to keep working on strengthening our consciousness and our ability to use that awareness in different ways.
Agreed. In the work that I do, we call those somebodies, our somebodies, which are story concepts about ourselves and about the world and about everything that have the difference between life, livingness, beingness, existence, and somebody's thought forms, beliefs, is that those can only be created by the ego mind objectifying experience and saying, well, this is what experience means. This is what experience is. This is what experience was. This is what experience will be. Just like a talking bird that chirps all day long. right?
And
And
that's what
those
AI
aren't
is.
those that may very well have been accurate when it occurred. You might have felt that and thought that. But today is today. That was 30 years ago. And you're still chirping that somebody is still telling you that that's what you experienced. And it hasn't updated. It hasn't uploaded your new experiences. It's stuck in a loop. So those objectified experiences may seem real, but again, back to AI. If AI is propagating those, and for whatever reason, it keeps you on your computer or on your phone, and those companies like that is dangerous. But those somebodies have to be healed, have to be cleared to be fully in your live, experience without those, in the way of you, so to speak.
But that's why I was saying, like, I'm worried because I've been approached by so many people or companies, let's say, who say, oh, I love what you do. Wouldn't it be great if we could find a way to kind of AI clone you so you could charge people less money and you could work with, 10 people when you're only working with one person at a time, and which feels like anathema to me because I want to connect with somebody's energy field as a human in my energy field. And therefore I would hate the idea that somebody would try and create that. Not only that, I don't think it's possible and I don't feel like it should be done. And maybe that's short-sighted, but I'm interested to see going forwards because I'm just one person who would say no. Maybe somebody else would say yes. And how will that work? And then what's going to happen as it moves forward? And will, an AI kind of healer or therapist? I know there are already AI therapists, let's say, who will listen to you and give you information and feedback or whatever. What are those? How is that going to affect people's health, people's bodies, people's mental health? I'm really curious moving forward.
Agreed. We should get Dr. David Black at USC Medical School, who's a energy meditation researcher. We should have a control group where they get actual real energy work done versus AI energy work done. And then we see at the end of the protocol what the results are.
Right, or an AI Reiki session or AI,
Somebody I'm sure will be doing that soon, but I would be I feel pretty confident that you being a human being interacting with their human beingness is going to have a significantly higher level of healing that sticks.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Chuck.
Wow, this is a rich topic. I feel like we just basically put our little toe in the water.
Yeah, there's a lot more to talk about.
There's a lot more ongoing discussion. We'll bookmark this one for another time. I don't even like talking about it either, honestly. It just makes me sick to even have to talk about it. I don't even know what that's about.
You don't even like talking about AI?
I don't even like talking about it. I don't
Interesting.
Yeah, it doesn't seem, you have some good, well-developed thoughts about it. I try to avoid it, honestly. But I do want to read the book can you hold up the book again one last time before we sign off?
It is called After. And I'll tell you, it's called After. It's by Bruce Grayson, MD. And it's the world's leading expert on near-death experiences, reveals his journey towards rethinking the nature of death, life, and the continuity of consciousness.
So I want to encourage anybody that watches the podcast, if you do read the book or if you do have any comments about what we've talked about, send us a DM, send us a message.
Or other things that you think would be really interesting
other
to
things
hear
that
about.
Make a good topic, definitely.
All right.
Okay.
Have a great rest of your day. Bye.